What would you do if the person you wronged risked everything to save your life? The question lingered in the air like a charged storm cloud, heavy with unspoken possibilities. In a dimly lit, upscale Italian restaurant nestled in the heart of New York City, the ambiance was a delicate mix of clinking glasses and hushed conversations. Marco Russo, a notorious mafia boss, sat alone at a corner table, his presence commanding yet unsettling. The soft glow of candlelight flickered, reflecting the turmoil simmering within him. He stared at his untouched plate of linguine, the rich aroma of garlic and herbs mingling with the tension that enveloped him. Marco had always thrived in chaos, but tonight felt different. Whispers of discontent echoed in his mind. A rift was forming in his organization, and trust, once a currency he traded with ease, was slipping through his fingers. He ran a hand through his slicked-back hair, his dark eyes scanning the restaurant. Patrons reveled in their meals, oblivious to the shadows lurking just beyond the polished facade of fine dining. For Marco, life had always been a balancing act between power and vulnerability, but the stakes were higher than ever. As he contemplated the precarious state of his empire, his gaze fell upon Lily, a waitress who had recently been fired for a minor mistake, an unintentional spill of red wine on a customer's shirt. She had been a fixture in the restaurant, her laughter brightening even the darkest days. Marco had always admired her resilience, the way she navigated her shifts with grace, serving patrons while dreaming of a life beyond the confines of her job. But tonight, as she cleared plates with a forced smile, her spirit seemed dimmed. The fire in her eyes was clouded by uncertainty, and Marco felt an unexpected tug at his conscience. Their paths had crossed in fleeting moments, marked by brief exchanges that hinted at something deeper. There was a connection, unspoken yet palpable, that rippled beneath the surface. Marco had always brushed aside, focusing instead on the empire he was building and the enemies he had made along the way. But as Lily brushed past his table, their eyes locked for a heartbeat, and he felt an inexplicable pull toward her. It was a moment that should have been trivial, yet it resonated within him, igniting a flicker of something he had long suppressed. Panic surged through him as he looked into her eyes, which were filled with pain, yet somehow still flickering with that undeniable spark of life. "Why did you do this?" he asked, his voice trembling with emotion. The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of regret and confusion. Through gritted teeth, she managed a faint smile, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Because you matter," she whispered, each word a struggle. "You have to live." Her sacrifice reverberated in his mind, leaving him wrestling with a whirlwind of emotions, grief, guilt, and an awakening sense of purpose. He had never considered the impact of his actions on those around him, but in that moment, everything shifted. As sirens wailed in the distance, Marco's world turned upside down. The chaos of the restaurant faded into a dull roar, and all he could focus on was Lily. He couldn't let her go. He couldn't let her sacrifice be in vain. With a newfound determination coursing through him, he pressed his hands against her wound, trying to staunch the flow of blood, his thoughts racing. "Help is coming, Lily. Just hold on," he urged, his voice cracking under the weight of fear. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder, and as paramedics burst through the restaurant doors, Marco felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him. They quickly took control, wheeling Lily onto a stretcher. But Marco couldn't let her out of his sight. He knew he had to follow her to the hospital to ensure she received the care she needed. The world he had built around himself seemed to crumble in her absence, and he was left grappling with the realization that he had been wrong about everything. As he rushed to the hospital, the adrenaline coursing through his veins masked the looming dread that gnawed at him. He could feel the weight of the decision he had to make pressing down on him. He had lived a life of crime, surrounded by darkness. But now, in the shadow of Lily's sacrifice, he felt the flicker of hope ignite within him. A chance at redemption. The hospital was a whirlwind of activity as doctors and nurses rushed to stabilize Lily. Marco paced the waiting room, his mind racing with questions. Why had she saved him? Did she see something in him that he couldn't? The uncertainty gnawed at him, but one truth became clear. He couldn't continue down the path he had chosen. He needed to change, not just for himself, but for Lily. In the sterile, fluorescent-lit corridor, he waited, caught between fear and hope. As the hours stretched on, he reflected on the life he had built, one fueled by power and control. But now, standing on the precipice of a new reality, he had a choice to make. The chaos of his world had collided with a moment of pure sacrifice, forcing him to confront the darkness that had consumed him for far too long. And as he waited for news of Lily, he realized he was no longer just a mafia boss. He was a man who had been given a second chance to make things right. The question remained, would he embrace it or let the shadows pull him back into their depths? As Marco paced the sterile corridor of the hospital, the tension in his chest felt as heavy as the weight of the world on his shoulders. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glare on the linoleum floor, but he barely noticed. All he could think about was the blood on his hands, not just the literal blood from the ambush, but the metaphorical stains of his choices, the life he had chosen that had led him to this moment. He was a man who had wielded power and fear like weapons, but now he was stripped bare, vulnerable in ways he had never allowed himself to be. His mind raced back to that fateful moment in the restaurant, the way Lily had stood up for him, her body intercepting the bullet meant for him. It was a moment that replayed in his mind like a haunting melody, echoing the depths of her bravery and the insanity of his world. He had fired her over a minor mistake, and now she lay fighting for her life because of him. The irony twisted like a knife in his gut. He was so deep in thought that he didn't notice the doctor approach until the man cleared his throat, pulling Marco from his reverie. The doctor wore a grim expression, and Marco's heart plummeted. "Mr. Russo?" he began, his voice steady but laced with concern. "Is she okay?" Marco interrupted, his voice a low whisper as panic surged through him. The doctor hesitated for a moment, and that silence was enough to send a chill down Marco's spine. "She's stable for now, but she's lost a significant amount of blood. We need to monitor her closely. She's a fighter, though. We're doing everything we can." "Can I see her?" Marco asked, desperation creeping into his tone. The doctor nodded, gesturing for Marco to follow. As they walked through the maze of whitewashed walls and sterile scents, Marco's mind raced through all the possibilities. What if she didn't pull through? What if she hadn't meant to save him, but had simply acted on instinct? He felt the weight of his actions pressing down on him, and a part of him was terrified of having to face that reality. When they reached Lily's room, Marco stood at the door for a moment, gathering his courage. The sight that greeted him was almost too much to bear. She lay there, pale and fragile, connected to machines that beeped and whirred in a steady rhythm. It felt surreal. The vibrant waitress he had known just hours ago was now reduced to this. He stepped inside cautiously, closing the door behind him as if to shut out the world outside. The sound of the machines filled the silence, a constant reminder of how close he had come to losing her. He approached the bed, his heart pounding in his chest as he took in the bruises that marred her skin and the bandage that covered her wound. Guilt washed over him like a wave, crashing into his soul. "Lily," he whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. "I'm so sorry." He reached out, gently taking her hand in his. It felt cold, and he squeezed it, hoping that somehow his warmth would seep into her. She was his enemy, the woman he had deemed unworthy just hours before. Now, she was the embodiment of sacrifice, of a love he had yet to understand. Marco's mind raced with questions. Why had she done it? What had compelled her to step in front of a bullet for him? As he sat by her side, memories of their brief encounters flickered through his mind. The way she had looked at him, the fire in her eyes, the way she had stood her ground even when he had been at his most imposing. He remembered her laughter, the lightness she brought to the dim corners of his world. He had taken her for granted, and now he was terrified it might be too late. Hours passed in a blur, the hospital lights dimming as evening fell outside. Marco remained by her side, lost in thought, until the door creaked open and a nurse entered. She offered a gentle smile, glancing between Marco and Lily. "You can speak to her, you know," she said softly. "Hearing your voice might help." Marco hesitated, unsure of what to say. Would his words mean anything to her? "Lily," he began, his voice steadying as he looked at her. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I need you to wake up. You're strong."
"You've shown me that today. I don't know what I would do without you." As he spoke, he felt a shift within himself. The walls he had built around his heart began to crack, revealing vulnerabilities he had spent a lifetime burying. He felt a strange connection to her, not just as a mafia boss to a waitress, but as a man to a woman who had changed his perspective in a heartbeat. "I've made so many mistakes," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I've hurt people, taken lives, and I never thought much about it. But you've shown me that there's more to life than power and fear. You've shown me courage." The nurse quietly left the room, allowing him a moment of solitude with his thoughts. Marco sat back, running a hand through his hair, feeling the weight of his confession. It was a strange feeling, opening up like this, but for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope. If Lily could survive this, then maybe he could change. Maybe he could be a better man. But as he pondered his future, the reality of his life loomed large. His enemies were still out there, plotting and waiting for the right moment to strike. He felt trapped between two worlds, the one that had been created by his choices and the one that Lily's sacrifice was beckoning him towards. With a determined resolve, Marco stood up and paced the small room, feeling a newfound sense of purpose. He had to protect her, not just from the physical threats, but from the darkness that surrounded him. He couldn't allow the chaos of his life to seep into hers any longer. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts until he found the one he needed. It was time to reach out to his closest ally, a man named Vincent, who had been with him through thick and thin. Marco needed to ensure that Lily would be safe, that she would have a chance to heal without the shadows of his past looming over her. As he dialed Vincent's number, he felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. What would he say? How could he explain the situation without revealing too much? But there was no turning back. The call connected, and Marco's heart raced as he heard Vincent's voice on the other end. "Marco? What's going on?" "Vincent," he replied, trying to keep his tone steady. "I need your help. There was an attempt on my life today." "What? Are you okay?" Vincent's voice sharpened with concern. "I'm fine, but Lily, she took a bullet for me. She's in the hospital." There was a moment of silence on the other end. "Damn, Marco. What are you going to do?" "I need to make sure she's safe. I don't want anyone getting to her while she's vulnerable," Marco insisted, the urgency in his voice unmistakable. "Consider it done. I'll set up a security detail, but you need to lay low for a while. The rivalry is heating up, and we can't afford any more mistakes." Marco nodded, even though Vincent couldn't see him. "I understand. Just make sure she's protected. I won't lose her, Vincent. Not after this." After ending the call, Marco stood in the dim light of the hospital room, a mix of determination and dread filling him. He knew the stakes were higher now than ever before. The world he had been a part of was dangerous, and it threatened to consume everything he had begun to cherish. As he sat back down beside Lily, he took her hand again, feeling the warmth begin to return. "I'll fight for you, Lily," he whispered, his heart thundering in his chest. "You fought for me, and now it's my turn. I promise to protect you. I'll change, I swear it." With those words, Marco felt the first real flicker of hope, a chance for redemption, not just for Lily, but for himself as well. Whatever darkness lay ahead, he was ready to face it. He would not let the shadows win. Marco's heart raced as he sat beside Lily in the sterile hospital room, the rhythmic beeping of the machines contrasting sharply with the chaos that had unfolded just hours earlier. The harsh fluorescent lights above cast a cold glow, illuminating the stark white walls that felt as confining as the weight of his guilt. How had it come to this? The woman he had barely acknowledged just days ago had risked her life for him, and now here she lay, vulnerable and unconscious. He leaned forward, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, his fingers trembling slightly as they made contact with her skin. "Lily," he murmured, the name rolling off his tongue like a prayer. "What were you thinking? You shouldn't have done that." His voice caught in his throat as he fought back the tide of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Guilt, fear, and a burgeoning sense of admiration warred within him. This woman, this waitress with dreams of a better life, had shown more courage than he had ever displayed in his life. As he sat there, memories of their brief interactions flooded his mind. Her laughter, though rare, had always lit up the dull atmosphere of the restaurant. He remembered how she had stood up to him over a minor mistake, her defiance striking a chord deep within him. He had fired her without a second thought, dismissing her dreams and aspirations as though they were mere trifles. But now he realized those moments held a significance he had been blind to. She was more than just a waitress. She was a symbol of hope in a world that offered none. The door creaked open, and a nurse entered, her expression a mix of professionalism and compassion. "Mr. Russo," she said, her tone gentle yet firm, "we need to monitor her closely. The bullet missed her vital organs, but she's still in critical condition. It's too early to tell how she'll recover." Marco nodded, swallowing hard as he absorbed the nurse's words. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was responsible for this. If it hadn't been for his enemies, she wouldn't be lying in that hospital bed. "Is there anything I can do?" he asked, his voice low and strained. The nurse hesitated, her gaze flickering to Lily before meeting Marco's eyes. "Just be here for her. Your presence might help her fight through this." He took a deep breath, determination settling within him. He would do more than just be there. He would protect her, no matter the cost. Marco's mind raced with thoughts of retribution. The attack on him had been orchestrated by someone he had trusted, a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. It was time for him to confront the shadows of his past and dismantle the threats looming over them. As the nurse left, Marco leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving Lily's face. He reflected on the life he had led, the choices he had made, and the people he had hurt along the way. The Mafia world was a treacherous one, filled with deception and bloodshed. But for the first time, he felt a flicker of doubt about the life he had chosen. Was it worth it? Was the power and control he craved worth the pain it inflicted on those around him? Hours passed, and as the night deepened, Marco found himself drifting in and out of thought. The sounds of the hospital faded into the background as he recalled the warmth of Lily's smile, the way her eyes sparkled with life and determination. He could still picture her standing there in the restaurant, her defiance bubbling just beneath the surface. He had dismissed her then, but now he saw her for who she truly was, a fighter. The door swung open again, and this time it was Vincent. Marco's heart sank at the sight of him. Vincent's expression was grave, and Marco knew that he was about to deliver news that would shatter the fragile peace he had found in this hospital room. "Marco," Vincent said, his voice low, "we need to talk. It's about the attack." Marco's jaw tightened as he motioned for Vincent to sit. "What do you know?" Vincent hesitated, glancing towards Lily before speaking.
The attack was coordinated by Angelo's crew. They're making a move against us, trying to take advantage of the tensions within our ranks. They think we're weak, Marco." "Weak?" Marco echoed, his voice rising. "They have no idea what we're capable of. I'll show them weakness." Vincent nodded slowly, understanding the fire igniting in Marco's chest. "But it's not just about us anymore. Lily's in the line of fire. If they think they can use her against you—" Marco's blood ran cold at the implication. The very thought of Lily being targeted again sent a surge of rage coursing through him. "They won't touch her. I won't let them," he vowed, his voice a low growl. "We need to make a statement. I'll end this before it escalates." Vincent leaned forward, the urgency of the situation evident in his eyes. "We need to be smart about this. We can't just charge in without a plan. We have to find out who's leaking information. We can't give them the advantage." Marco clenched his fists, the frustration boiling within him. But deep down he knew Vincent was right. They couldn't act recklessly, not now, not with Lily's life hanging in the balance. "Fine," he said, forcing himself to take a breath. "We'll gather intel. But I want eyes on her at all times. I won't lose her again." As Vincent nodded, Marco's mind shifted back to Lily. He couldn't shake the image of her lying there, fighting for her life while he plotted revenge. He felt a twinge of guilt. He was the one who had brought this chaos into her life. She deserved better than to be entangled in his world of crime. In the days that followed, Marco became a ghost in the hospital, spending every waking moment by Lily's side. He watched as she fought her way back to consciousness, each flicker of her eyelids sending waves of hope crashing over him. He would talk to her, sharing stories of his past, his struggles, and the things he longed to change. He poured his heart out to her, as if she could hear him and somehow understand the depths of his remorse. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the room, Marco felt a shift in the atmosphere. Lily's fingers twitched and her eyes fluttered open, revealing the confusion and pain etched across her features. "Marco?" she whispered, her voice hoarse but filled with a resolve that made his heart soar. "I'm here, Lily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're safe now." Her gaze searched his, and in that moment he could see the spark of the woman he had come to admire. "What happened?" she asked, her brow furrowing as she tried to piece together the events that had led her to this moment. "There was an attack," he explained, his tone steady but laced with the weight of their reality. "You saved my life. You took the bullet for me." Her eyes widened in shock, and Marco could see the internal struggle as she processed his words. I didn't think. I just acted," she murmured, her voice trembling. "I thought you were going to die." The vulnerability in her voice struck him like a dagger. "You're the brave one, Lily. You didn't have to do that. I never wanted you to get hurt," he said, his heart aching at the thought of her sacrifice. "Maybe I just wanted to prove that I'm more than just a waitress," she replied, a flicker of defiance igniting in her eyes. "I wanted to show that I could fight too, that I could stand up for what's right." In that moment, Marco realized how deeply he had underestimated her. She was not just a victim of circumstance, she was a warrior in her own right. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers, feeling the warmth radiating from her touch. "Lily, I promise you, I will change. I'll fight for both of us." As they locked eyes, a silent understanding passed between them. This was more than a simple romance. It was a bond forged in fire and sacrifice. They were both fighting for their futures now, and together they would face the darkness threatening to engulf them. But little did they know, the true battle was just beginning. As Marco stood in the sterile, fluorescent-lit hospital room, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on him. Lily lay unconscious, her face pale and fragile against the stark white sheets. The steady beeping of the heart monitor provided a rhythm to his spiraling thoughts. How could he have let this happen? The question gnawed at him, echoing through the shadows of his mind.
She had intervened, risking everything for a man she barely knew, a man who had wronged her just hours before. He had always been a man of power, a man who commanded respect through fear and intimidation. Yet, in that moment, he felt utterly powerless. He paced the small room, his thoughts racing as he replayed the events that had led to this moment. The chaos of the ambush, the gunfire, and then Lily's brave leap into danger. It was as if everything he had built was crumbling before his eyes, and the only thing that truly mattered was the woman lying in that bed. Marco's heart tightened as he recalled her fierce spirit. Lily was no ordinary waitress. She was a woman with dreams, aspirations, and an undeniable fire in her soul. He had seen it in her eyes when she stood up to him, defying the very man who held her future in his hands. Now that spirit lay dormant, and he was determined to revive it. He couldn't allow her sacrifice to be in vain. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his reverie. It was a text from his right-hand man, Vinny, urging him to return to the city. The gang was restless, and news of the attack had spread like wildfire. They needed their boss, but Marco felt anchored to this hospital room, unwilling to leave Lily's side. He couldn't abandon her now, not when she had shown him what true courage looked like. With a deep breath, Marco made a decision. He would protect Lily at all costs, even if it meant confronting the chaos of his life head-on. He pulled out his phone and texted Vinny back, telling him to handle things without him for the time being. He had to figure out how to dismantle the threats against them, but first, he needed to be there for Lily. As the hours passed, Marco remained by her side, watching and waiting. He spoke to her softly, recounting stories from his past. His childhood in the gritty streets of Brooklyn, his rise through the ranks of the Mafia, and the loneliness that often accompanied power. He opened up about the fear that had driven him to make ruthless choices, a fear that now felt insignificant compared to the love he found himself feeling for her. The sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow through the window. As the shadows grew long, Marco noticed a flicker in Lily's eyelids. Hope surged within him, and he leaned closer, whispering her name. "Lily, can you hear me?" Slowly, her eyes fluttered open, revealing a mix of confusion and pain. "Marco?" she croaked, her voice barely above a whisper. Relief washed over him as he grasped her hand tightly. "I'm here, Lily. You're safe now. I'm so sorry for everything," he murmured, his heart aching at the sight of her bruised and bandaged form. "I never wanted this for you." She blinked slowly, processing his words. "You didn't ask me to save you," she managed, her voice strained. "I just couldn't let them hurt you." Marco felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. This woman, who had been a mere waitress in his life, had become his salvation. "Why would you do that for me?" The question escaped his lips before he could stop it. "Because I believe everyone deserves a chance," she replied, her voice growing stronger. "Even you." In that moment, Marco understood the depth of her bravery. It wasn't just about him. It was about the possibilities of change, of redemption. "Lily, I promise I will make this right. I won't let anyone hurt you again," he vowed, his voice firm with determination. She smiled weakly, but there was a spark in her eyes that ignited something within Marco. He realized that he was no longer the man he once was. The fear that had governed his life had been replaced by a fierce desire to protect and cherish her. Days passed as Lily recovered, and during that time, Marco became her unwavering support. He spent every moment by her side, attending to her needs, encouraging her to regain her strength. In the process,
He began to forge a new path for himself. He reached out to allies and started gathering information about the gang that had attacked them. It was time to confront his enemies, but this time he would do it differently. As Lily gained her strength, Marco found himself revealing more of his world to her. He shared the intricacies of the Mafia, the politics, the betrayals, and the alliances that shaped his life. He was no longer ashamed of his past. Instead, he saw it as a stepping stone to a better future. "I want to leave this behind," he confessed one night as they sat together in her hospital room, the city lights twinkling outside the window. "I want to build something real, something honest." Lily looked at him, her expression serious. "Can you really do that, Marco? Leave it all behind?" He nodded, conviction swelling within him. "I have to. For you. For us." As she smiled, he felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of hope he hadn't experienced in years. But the shadows of his past were not far behind. The gang responsible for the attack would not rest until they claimed what they believed was theirs. Marco knew he had to act before it was too late. The following week, Marco arranged a meeting with his most trusted allies. In a dimly lit back room of one of his restaurants, he laid out his plan. "I'm done with the old ways. We're going to dismantle the competition and start fresh. We need to send a message." Vinny, his loyal friend, looked skeptical. "You really think we can just walk away? They won't let you go that easily." Marco's jaw tightened. "Then we make them understand that I'm not someone to be trifled with. I won't let them hurt Lily again." As the meeting progressed, Marco felt a sense of camaraderie with his allies. They had shared victories and losses together, but this time felt different. He wasn't just fighting for power, he was fighting for a future he envisioned with Lily by his side. In the days that followed, Marco executed his plan. He confronted the rival gang with calculated precision, leveraging his knowledge of their weaknesses and turning former allies against them. The stakes were high, and the tension in the city grew as word spread of the brewing conflict. As the confrontation loomed closer, Marco couldn't shake the feeling of dread. He had put everything on the line, and the thought of losing Lily was unbearable. He needed to protect her, and that meant confronting the darkness that had defined his life for far too long. The night of the showdown arrived, and Marco stood outside the abandoned warehouse where the meeting would take place. He could feel the weight of his past pressing down on him. This was the moment of reckoning. As he stepped inside, the atmosphere crackled with tension. His enemies were gathered, their expressions a mix of amusement and contempt. "Look who decided to show up," one of them sneered, "the big boss himself." Marco squared his shoulders, unwavering. "I'm not here to play games. This ends tonight." The room erupted into chaos as both sides clashed, but Marco fought with a ferocity he had never known. Each movement was fueled by the love he felt for Lily, and with each blow he pushed towards a new beginning. As the dust settled and the last of his enemies lay defeated, Marco felt a surge of triumph. He had faced his past and emerged victorious, but the victory was bittersweet. He knew the fight for a new life was just beginning. Returning to the hospital, he found Lily awake, her eyes wide with concern. "Marco, what happened? Are you okay?" He took a deep breath, a mixture of relief and apprehension flooding through him. "I'm fine, Lily. I took care of it. It's over." "Over?" she asked, searching his face for reassurance. "Yes," he affirmed, taking her hand in his. "I promise you, it's finally over. We can start fresh, together." Lily's eyes sparkled with hope, and Marco felt a deep connection solidify between them. Together, they had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. They would build a life free from the shadows of the past, united by their shared resilience and the love that had blossomed through adversity. As they sat together hand in hand, Marco realized that he had not only saved Lily's life, she had saved his in return. Their journey was just beginning, but he was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, knowing that love, sacrifice, and redemption were the true forces that would guide them through the darkness. "Thank you for saving me, Marco," Lily said softly, her gaze steady. "No, thank you for being my light," he replied, his heart swelling with emotion. In that moment, they both understood that love was not just a feeling, it was a choice they would make every day, a promise to face whatever challenges came their way, together. The world outside may still be filled with danger and uncertainty, but inside that hospital room, there was hope, and with it, a future waiting to be written. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the room, Marco leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to Lily's forehead. They were no longer defined by their pasts. They were architects of their own destiny, ready to write the next chapter of their lives. And together, they would face whatever darkness threatened to engulf them, for love had become their greatest weapon and their truest refuge. "Thank you for saving me, Marco," Lily said softly, her gaze steady. "No, thank you for being my light," he replied, his heart swelling with emotion. In that moment, they both understood that love was not just a feeling, it was a choice they would make every day, a promise to face whatever challenges came their way, together. The world outside may still be filled with danger and uncertainty, but inside that hospital room, there was hope, and with it, a future waiting to be written. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the room, Marco leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to Lily's forehead. They were no longer defined by their pasts. They were architects of their own destiny, ready to write the next chapter of their lives, and together, they would face whatever darkness threatened to engulf them, for love had become their greatest weapon and their truest refuge.